much of the life of three famous pirates sunk into oblivion. What we know is based on scraps of English court recordings, where the accused tried to avoid gallows. Under the threat of loops, no one was in a hurry to talk in detail about their adventures. But what they nevertheless told, along with the stories of the survivors, enough to inspire the creation of an exciting series about the life of Mary Read and Bonny and the Chintz Jack. August 1719, pirate brigantine attacks the English galleon. Both ships are armed with guns, but the pirate captain is not going to get involved in a protracted artillery duel. He is cunning. A larger and more maneuverable brigantine takes a position in the wake of galleon, finding himself out of the reach of his side guns. It looks like a wolf pursuing a huge bull. With the skill of an experienced sailor, brigantine steals the wind at the galleon, slowing his move. The speed of the pirate ship remains the same, and the clumsy galleon loses its course. Brigantine is quickly getting closer. Special ramps for boarding are put forward from her nose, and the English team is trying to deploy fodder guns. But the pirates are ahead of them. Their guns are already aimed at the stern of galleon, and the British volley sweeps the British. Two response corps do not cause serious damage. The air is filled with smoke. The gunpowder in those days was far from perfect, but the hooks flying from the pirate ship and tightly binding two vessels are visible through smoke. The outcome of the battle will decide boarding. However, the British are not going to give up. Galleon is well armed, and the English soldiers are formidable opponents. The infantry of the Empire conquered half the world, and the deck is full of musketeers. The side of the galleon is higher, which gives them an advantage. Fearing a new bundle of buckshot, the soldiers retreat, waiting for the attack of the pirates in the dead zone. The ships are faced with smoke is thickening. It seems that something is on fire on the brigantine. Then a furious cry of pirates is heard, and a dozen figures appear on the ladder. The English musketeers shoot, torn up attacking pieces. Or so it seems. There is no blood because these are mannequins. One of the survivors from the English side tells what happened next. It was terrible. We did not have time to reload the muskets. The whole deck was instantly filled with pirates fighting like demons. We tried to keep the defense, but it was hopeless. In the center of all this was a witch. A real witch in a red shirt and linen pants, I swear. No one could approach her. She chopped ours like grass. She had red hair, and she deftly operated on an boarding saber, throwing her from hand to hand. I shot at it from a pistol, but the bullet must have bounced. I definitely hit. I am a good shooter. It was a nightmare. The witch killed our captain. We retreated to the nose, and the first assistant tried to collect us. The pirates retreated for a short while on the deck. It was too close for a full-fledged attack. I stood on the edge, reloading the gun when gunpowder crumbled. And then this devil grabbed the core, set fire to the wick, and threw it right into us. The soldiers stood tight, and the explosion tore them into pieces. It was hell. Those who survived surrendered. I also raised my hands. Then we were driven to the stern, and the witch pointed to a bloodied saber at the young lieutenant, who bravely fought to the end. She laughed and said, "There will be no mercy to any of you, and I will take you to my cabin at night. If I am satisfied, I will let it go. If not, I will cut off my head. Agree?" I don't know what the lieutenant answered because the pirates laughed, and I jumped overboard. I spent 2 days in the water, holding on to the fragment until I was picked up by a random ship. The red-haired witch, who headed the boarding, was Bonny. She was then 29 years old. The born feeder, and was born in Kinsale, County Cork, Ireland. At that time, the Irish lived in terrifying poverty. Anyone who could feed his family with bread was considered prosperous. The British, who ruled Ireland, oppressed the local population in all possible ways. Life on the Emerald Island was difficult. Perhaps that is why so many Irish sailors became pirates, and one of the few who was lucky. Her family was rich even by modern standards. Her father, a successful lawyer, provided her with a comfortable childhood. Food and outfits in the house were in abundance. But according to the strict religious norms of that time, her father was not completely her father, and Cormac was illegitimate. Her father's life was difficult, despite the financial success. His marriage was unhappy. The wife could not have children, but refused to give him a divorce. Having suspected him in connection with the servant, she came up with a plan. When her husband left for business, Mrs. Cormack fired the maid and expelled her from the city so that she could not warn the lawyer. Then she hid 3 witnesses in the house. According to the law, there would be 2, but she decided to be safe and lay down in bed of the maid. William returned late at night. He quietly entered the house, not wanting to wake his wife, and headed for the maid's room. Whispering affectionate words, he lay down in a warm bed and found his wife there. What a surprise! And 3 witnesses with a protocol. It was not just a scandal, it was the largest scandal in the city. In patriarchal Ireland, morality was strict. Justice triumphed, and William went to prison. Not for long, however. Who could put a lawyer for a long time? The very fact that he spent at least for some time was a victory for his angry wife. Freed, William went to the maid. Soon they had the girl grew up in an atmosphere of constant scandals, and the Irish society rejected her parents. They could not make a legal marriage. Then they decided to leave everything and start a new life in a new light. It was not easy, but William was determined. The family went to a new life on a new continent. For the little Anne, the ship seemed something from a fairy tale. It was so poisoned at home that she rarely went outside. After several weeks at sea, they arrived in Charleston, South Carolina. There William got a job as a lawyer, married again, and bought a plantation. The mansion in the old English style, servants, horses, slaves, and cotton. It is here that his NN grew up. She had a quick-tempered character, but anyone who was poisoned in childhood will understand her rage. Add Irish blood to this, and was spoiled as the only child. They didn't count the money in the house, and this only spoiled it. She behaved as if everything was allowed to her. At first, her pranks were attributed to a difficult childhood, but over time her behavior became more dangerous. It was in Carolina that she learned to fight. A real lady would answer male flirting with a cold look or silence. But Anne? She either kissed in response. If she liked him, either she knocked down. And this is not an exaggeration. Her blows were accurate, sharp, and unexpected. One young man, who allowed himself, spent a week in the hospital after her blow. At home, she was called a little tiger. Then the claws grew at the tiger. First, she hit a maid with a knife, who tried to steal one of her trinkets. The maid was an Englishwoman, and this was enough to cause Anne's hostility. The maid got off with scratches, and Anne received a reprimand from her father, perhaps because she did not bring the matter to the end. The maid was fired with compensation, and the incident is frozen. But Anne's reputation began to deteriorate. The father hired an elderly servant to avoid new problems, but Anne stabbed him, saying that he had molested her. Father used his connections and money to hush up the matter, but more servants were not hired for Anne. Her reputation was spoiled. Father warned her to pull herself together, and Anne decided that he was over with pranks. Now she went to VA Bank. What she did before seemed to be children's fun, and began to visit port taverns, not for fights. People were afraid to touch her, but to find a suitable sore. After several lovers, there is no evidence that she killed one of them. She stopped at James Bonny. He became the happy owner of a red-haired beauty. James was a simple sailor, a former pirate pardoned in amnesty. He probably hoped that father and would give him half-well condition, but the lawyer copied him and banned his marriage. Without the consent of his father, the wedding was a secret. Of course, they got married right away. The next morning, happy newlyweds came to his father. "Sorry, dear father, we are here to stay, and it's time to share." But Father, and also the Irishman, was not so simple. He threw James from the stairs and made a serious conversation to his daughter. He made it clear that they are unwanted here. They could leave now or wait until the dogs were pushed. As a result, the young barely carried away their legs. To the honor of his father, he nevertheless cared for his daughter. Dogs trained to hunt for fugitive slaves would only go for James. He sincerely believed that it would be better for Anne, and perhaps he was right. One way or another, Anne and James Bonny left South Carolina and fled to New Providence in Begums. where a pirate freeman reigned. It was something like a modern Monte Carlo, where you could put on anything, even on your life,